Hey, bell them Premier League back again, please, lad. Embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is, of course, Cameron, and welcome back today to another live stream. We are back. We are back with another stream. We are back with another article surrounding Everton's financial position and Everton's financial situation. If you haven't read today, or yesterday should I say, sorry, but leading into today, it was reported by the Daily Mail late last night that Everton Football Club could be sued for up to £300 million by fellow Premier League clubs for their failings to comply with the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. This was reported by Matt Hughes of the Daily Mail, who actually reported something very, very similar last year, which we will discuss a little bit later on in the live stream. But Matt Hughes reported that Everton face being sued for £300 million if found guilty of spending breaches, with Southampton, Leeds, Leicester, Nottingham Forest and Burnley joining forces to inform Premier League they demand compensation. I can't even read that without giggling, as you've just seen. This was then forwarded on by Martin Ziegler, who is a reporter for The Times. Matthews, of course, a reporter for the Daily Mail. And Martin said, Leeds, Southampton, Leicester City and Nottingham Forest all want sanctions imposed on Everton well before the start of next season. I wonder why that is. The teams, however, have distanced themselves from reports that they have lodged legal papers with the league this season. And obviously the original report from Martin stating that a group of Premier League clubs have failed in a bid to have Everton's charge for breaching FFP rules fast-tracked so it is dealt with before the end of the season. I find that last sentence really, really funny. The teams, however, have distanced themselves from reports that they have lodged legal papers with the league this season. So effectively, they're not willing to legally have any form of involvement in this situation. They just want to moan and complain and effectively want to try and force some form of decision to be made before the end of this Premier League season, which, by the way, ends in less than 2 weeks' time. So those clubs that we've just mentioned are wanting this massive investigation, as it seems, because it's been ongoing for a number of months now, to be concluded within the next 2 weeks, and not only concluded within the next 2 weeks, but for a punishment to be set and implied within that period of time as well, for effectively one reason and one reason only, and that is to try and boost their own chances of staying in the Premier League. They're not actually that bothered about going down the legal route with it, because that may mean that they're made to look like idiots. They just want to try and moan about it to see if they can get anything out of it. It's embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. And don't get me wrong, the financial position that Everton are in and the financial situation that Everton are in is worrying, and is certainly by no means anybody's fault but our own. And the position that Everton find themselves currently in the Premier League table is by no means anybody's fault but our own. And I'm not for 1 second blaming anybody for the fact that Everton are currently, in our second consecutive relegation battle, and, for the fact that we're being investigated for potential financial fair play breaches. Whatever the outcome of that investigation is and whatever the eventual punishment for that is, will be completely will be completely the fault of the people that are in charge of Everton Football Club and the owner, and the people that are in charge of this football club will have to take responsibility and will have to take accountability for that. And, hopefully, by the time that this is resolved and by the time that this is, it comes to a conclusion, hopefully, the same people that put us in this position are no longer at the football club, and hopefully the owner that has put us in this position is no longer at the football club. But we don't know whether or not that will be the case. However, it's just a little bit embarrassing, isn't it? When you think of, on behalf of the other Premier League clubs that are trying to some way, have some form of I can only assume points deduction that they're after them. I can't see them being after a fine. I can't see them being after a transfer ban because it has absolutely no effect on them whatsoever. So effectively, clubs that are in and around a similar position to what Everton are trying to force a points deduction before the end of the season to boost their chances of staying in the Premier League. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And this isn't even me defending Everton, because as I said, the way Everton have been ran over the course of the last 4, 5, 6 years, that has put us in this position, not only where we are fighting our second consecutive relegation battle, but also the fact that, financially we're in such a poor position. That is indefensible, and I will never sit here and defend that. But if the shoe was on the other foot, and let's say, Wolves... not Wolves, sorry. Let's say Leicester City or Leeds United were currently being investigated by the Premier League, or, Southampton or Burnley last year, and Everton decided to try and, write to the Premier League to demand that team that was being investigated are punished, quicker to try and give ourselves a better chance of staying in the division. I'd be a little bit embarrassed as an Evertonian if I was reading that. I'd be sitting here going, well, it's nothing to do with those teams, and it's nothing to that situation has nothing to do with us. The reason we're in the position that we're in is because of our own failures, nothing to do with their failures. The reason Leicester City are in the position that they're in this season is because they've been ran dreadfully for the last 12 months, and they've been allowed to go from a side that were competing for positions in Europe and, winning FA Cups and getting to, the latter stages of cup competitions, to a team that looked completely down and out, a team whose fans are booing them off the pitch and singing, "You're not fit to wear the shirt." The reason for that is nothing to do with Everton's financial situation. It's everything to do with the disgraceful running of that football club, and as well, which makes this situation even funnier, the fact that Leicester are financially in a dreadful situation as well. The reason Leeds United are in their second consecutive relegation battle isn't because of the fact that Everton have spent too much money over the years and are being investigated. It's because Leeds United are being ran like a dreadful football club as well, a little bit like Everton. So if the shoe was on the other foot and this was Everton trying to, write to the Premier League and trying to force some form of punishment on one of these other clubs for a situation that clearly hasn't, come to its conclusion yet, I'd be a little bit embarrassed to be an Everton fan. I'd be sitting here thinking, well, where's the accountability? Where's the responsibility? And I'm sure that there'll be Leeds United fans and Leicester City fans sitting there now thinking, well, hang on, why are we trying to put the situation we're in on, the hands of somebody else? Why are we trying to shift the blame onto somebody else? It's got nothing to do with them. It's completely our fault, in the same ways that the reason Everton are in the position they're in is nothing to do with any other football club. It's to do with how badly Everton have been run. And this isn't the first time this has happened. If you remember, at this point last season, the same journalist, who we'll talk about in a moment, Matt Hughes of the Daily Mail, reported the same sort of situation that Burnley and Leeds United, where we're complaining to the Premier League about Everton and Everton spending and wanting to see the papers and wanting to see the documents, that Everton had provided to the Premier League because they didn't believe that they were correct and that they wanted the points deduction, etc., etc. Again, last season, the Premier League told Leeds United and Burnley where to go and said, listen, it's got nothing to do with you. We're happy with what we've seen. Piss off. And it seems like, certainly from Martin Ziegler's reports, that the Premier League have rejected this approach from those Premier League clubs. It seems like they've been told it again very similarly, but Southampton in there, I'm not really sure why they're of any interest. They're already down. Even if Everton are given a points deduction over the next 2 weeks, it won't make any difference to Southampton. But Leeds, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, is it any sort of coincidence that those are the teams that are in and around us fighting for relegation? Where are Burnley, actually? Burnley last season were incredibly worried about Everton's financial situation, and they were, complaining to the Premier League, and they were seemingly upset and wanting to see where Everton's, papers were at and documents were at. Why aren't Burnley involved this season? Why aren't they bothered this season? Is it because that we're not a direct threat to them? Is it because they're in the Championship? Is it because they've already been promoted? Interesting, that, isn't it? Why aren't Manchester City or Manchester United or Fulham or Brighton or Wolves, reporting problems to the Premier League about Everton, oh wait, it's because they're not bothered about us either, because we don't directly impact them. It's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing from the clubs, in my opinion. It's almost like, as I said, a lack of responsibility, a lack of accountability. And if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Everton, complaining to the Premier League about Leicester spending or Leeds spending or Forest spending this summer, then I'd be sitting here a little bit embarrassed. I'd be sitting here thinking, oh, bloody hell, it's not really what you want to be doing. Take responsibility and accountability for the position that we're in. Don't try and say, oh, actually, let's go and try and drag them through the mud because, we don't want to take accountability. And it's embarrassing for the journalist as well. Let's be honest. Matt Hughes is very clearly needs his nappy changing, and very clearly hasn't had his nappy changing and hasn't been bought any new teddy bears or cut toy cars for a while, because this is the second season on the bounce. At this stage in the season, he's decided to bring out a report suggesting that Premier League clubs are wanting to drag Everton down and headlining it with headlines like Everton could be sued for £300 million by Premier League clubs, this, that and the other. As I said, and this was reported last night. I was going to do this video last night, but I knew it would very quickly be rewritten with actual facts. And as we've seen today from the Times' article, the actual fact is that those Premier League clubs have failed in a bid to have Everton's charged for breaching financial fair play rules fast tracked. So there is no situation. Everton can't be sued for £300 million between now and the end of the season, because those actions and those implications aren't going to be concluded until after that point. So, the article yesterday by what's his face in the Daily Mail was simply just to try and create anxiety, try and create pressure and stress amongst the Evertonians, because whoever he is, he's clearly not a fan of Everton Football Club. He clearly wants Everton Football Club to go down, and he's clearly wanting to throw his toys out the pram for the second season on the bounce. Now, am I worried about Everton's financial position and Everton's financial situation? Yes, I am. I am incredibly worried about it, because if we're found guilty of this, then the implication could be horrendous, whether it's a points deduction, whether it's a fine, or whether it's a transfer ban. All of them have different implications on Everton, and I'm not quite sure which one I would prefer, to be honest. The points deduction could be absolutely horrendous, especially if we stay in the Premier League this season, because given we've been in a relegation battle the last 2 seasons on the bounce, there's no guarantee we won't be in one next season, and if we are with a points deduction, then we won't survive. It's as simple as that. A transfer ban equally could be as horrendous, because we clearly know that there's areas in this team that need improving, and need improving fast. Forwards, strikers, creative players, etc. And a massive fine is only going to put us in more financial trouble, isn't it? So I am worried about it. I'm massively worried about it. But that worry needs to be put to one side for me, for all of us. We are going into what is a cup final on Saturday. It's as simple as that. And I've seen a number of people sort of saying on social media, and people I've spoken to, friends, about Saturday, saying, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because we've got Bournemouth on the last day of the season and we've always got that Bournemouth game. I do not want to be going into Bournemouth on the final day of the season needing to win, especially given we've lost 10 home games this season. 10 home games, and we are going to do that live game review to the Manchester City game a little bit later on tonight. But 10 home games Everton have lost this season. Can anybody name me one team that has beaten us at Goodison Park this season that you would say, you would look at before the start of the season and think, I think they'll beat us comfortably there? Other than Manchester City, of course. Maybe Brighton, you would say. Pretty much everybody else we've been beaten by are games that you would look at and go, we should have won that. It seems like Southampton, teams like Fulham, who I know have had a great season, but I still simply cannot sit here and take it any other way of that, other than we should have won that game. We drew with Forest at home earlier on this season, which was a shocking result. Most of the teams that we've either lost to or dropped points to at Goodison this season have been games that Everton simply should have won. So I'm not willing to sit here and say, well, it doesn't really matter this game on Saturday because we've got Bournemouth on, next week at Goodison. Saturday is a game that Everton simply have to throw everything at. It is a cup final, effectively. It really is, and Everton could be safe. On Saturday if we win that game and if other results go our way. So I am worried about the financial position. I am worried about the financial situation. I get that, but that is a worry for 3 weeks' time when the Premier League season is concluded and Everton are either preparing for Premier League football next season or, and hopefully this isn't the case, touch wood, preparing for Championship football. And then we can start worrying about the financial situation and the position that Everton are in. I mean, the Blues makes a good point. He says, I've got to be honest, if we got relegated because another club broke the rules, I'd be moaning as well. Can't blame them for believing we broke the rules. It's a difficult one because Everton, I honestly don't think any of the clubs have got a leg to stand on. And I'll tell you why. If Everton had gone out in January and spent £80 million on a striker that had come in and scored 10 goals and scored the goal in the game that ultimately seen us stay in the division, and that £80 million that we'd spent would have broken financial fair play, then yes, I'd be sitting here saying, they've got a point there. We've gone out in January, we've spent money we didn't have, we've broken a rule, we've brought in a player that ultimately has kept us up, and somebody else has gone down off the back of us breaking a rule. Everton have spent very little money for the 2 seasons that we've been in a relegation battle. We spent 1.5 million last summer, and whatever we spent in January, 30, 40 million pounds that we ended up making up on Anthony Gordon this January because we didn't spend a penny this January. And in the summer we spent, again, a net spend of however much because we sold Richarlison and, a couple of other players that had gone, here and there as well. And however much we spent net over the last 2 years, it hasn't been a very large amount of money. It's certainly not been as much as what Nottingham Forest have spent. Probably not as much as Leeds, and maybe not as much as Leicester either. Everton's financial issue comes from the spending previously. When we'd spent 300, 400 million across 4 seasons with Ronald Koeman and Marco Silva and Carlo Ancelotti, etc., etc. We weren't in relegation battles at that time. So yes, I appreciate the thought of Everton staying up whilst breaking a rule would be a little bit disheartening. If Leeds were to stay up in this position and we were to go down, you'd be a little bit disheartened, yes, but I still don't think Everton would have a leg to stand on. I'd still, as an Everton fan, sit here and go, well, okay, Leeds might have spent 500 million 4 years ago, when they couldn't, but we weren't in a relegation battle 4 years ago. We were in a relegation battle this 2 seasons, and Leeds haven't spent that money this 2 seasons, and we've still gone down, so we have to look at ourselves, and that's the way I sort of see it. And yes, there's obviously a little bit of bias in there, and yes, you could say, well, if you're only saying that because you're defending Everton Football Club. As I've said at the start of this video, I'm not defending Everton Football Club in this video. The financial position Everton are in is completely down to themselves, and the position Everton are in the league is completely down to themselves, in the same way as the position Leeds, Leicester, Forest, Southampton and any other club over the last 2 years that have been in a relegation battle is down to themselves, not down to Everton. So yeah, that's how I see it. Like I said, if we'd gone out in January and spent £100 million on a player that had come in and kept us up, and we hadn't had that £100 million to spend, then I'd go, okay, that's a little bit unfair, but we haven't done that, have we? We haven't done that. We've bought no one in January because of the position that we're in. So our financial problem comes historically, and because of that problem, we haven't spent any more than what we can in the last 2 seasons. And the last 2 seasons, we've been in a relegation battle. So, yeah, like I said, for me, it's a little bit embarrassing. It's a little bit embarrassing. It's embarrassing from the Daily Mail and Matt Hughes to try and release an article to try and create anxiety and fear and stress amongst the Evertonians over a situation that is complete and utter nonsense. And it's embarrassing from those fellow Premier League clubs to try and create an issue, when really they should be looking at themselves and taking accountability and responsibility for their own problems. Because if it was the other way around, I'd be thinking, well, why are we trying to force the Premier League to apply sanctions on another club when the reason we're in the position we're in is because of ourselves, not because of them. So, yeah, as I said, Martin Ziegler of the Times pretty much confirming today that, yeah, it's a failed bid, so nothing is going to come of this. Yeah, listen, that's not me saying nothing will come of the sanction, nothing will come of the investigation, by the way. Everton very well could be sanctioned and very well could be found guilty, but it isn't going to come in the next 2 weeks, and it certainly isn't going to be, the punishment isn't going to be applied in the next 2 weeks either. However, it is still incredibly worrying because there still is a possibility Everton could receive a punishment that could be a transfer ban or a points deduction, and that would be absolutely horrendous. But, like I said, for me, that is something to worry about after this season is concluded, after Saturday is concluded, and after next week is concluded, because we simply have to focus all of our energy positively on the final 2 games of the season. And that ultimately is the is the goal. And if we do that, then hopefully we give ourselves the best chance of staying up. And then, hopefully we're not in a position next season to have relegation rivals moaning about us to the Premier League. I'd be interested to see why Leicester are in the position that they're in, because they've spent a fair bit of money over the years, and they were challenging for Europe last season, and now they're in a relegation battle. So why is that? Well, there you go. Forest bought 722 players in the summer, so surely their finances can be questioned. What about Chelsea, who've spent £700 million in the last 6 months? Can that not be questioned? I don't know. But like I said, for me, I wouldn't pay too much attention to this. It's a bunch of desperate Premier League clubs trying to, trying to grab anything that they can possibly get, and it's a journalist trying to create tension and anxiety going into the last 2 games of the season. We might get a hefty fine, we might get a hefty points deduction if we're found guilty. By the way, there's no guarantee that we will be found guilty. If we're found guilty, we might get them those repercussions, and we would deserve those repercussions as well if we're found guilty, but that isn't going to be concluded in the next 2 weeks. And we need to focus our energy positively on those next 2 games. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. It only takes a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you don't know where that reference come, by the way, from the start of the video, me saying Bell the Premier League again, it's a meme on Twitter. If you don't know, get to know. I thought it was quite funny when I put it up this morning, and it's got a few likes, so I thought I'd start the video with it. Yeah, we'll be back in about 2 hours or so with the game review to the Manchester City game, so don't forget to look out for that one. Big thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and we'll see you later.